And then if we feel good about the moat, then we try to figure out whether the Lord is going to try and take it all for himself, or whether he's likely to do something stupid with the proceeds, etc. But that's the way we look at businesses. Ideally, is you want terrific management at a terrific business, and that's what we look for.
Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This video is part 3 of my series where we learn how to invest in stocks and how to beat the market by learning the framework used by Warren Buffett, Phil Town and Charlie Munger. If you want to learn this framework from the masters, I highly recommend reading the book Rule 1 by Phil Town. And if you missed parts 1 and 2 of this series, I'll put a link somewhere up here so you can watch those videos first. So let's get started. We now know that Warren Buffett's #1 rule of investing is to not lose money, which Phil Town translated as investing with certainty. And in order to invest with certainty, we need to use the 4 M's to find a wonderful business at an attractive price. In this video, we're going to look at the third M, which is management. Unlike the first 2 M's, which focus on the business itself, the third M is all about the people running the business and how to know if they're on our side as owners or if they're what Phil Town calls a mercenary. We're going to look at the different members of a management team that influence the direction a company can take, but we're going to spend most of our time looking at the CEO. The main management positions are the executives. So we have the COO or the Chief Operating Officer, the CFO or the Chief Finance Officer, the CTO or the Chief Technology Officer, and finally the CEO or the Chief Executive Officer. And there's also the board of directors, which every public company must have. Now, you don't have to know the life story of every single executive or every single member of the board, but it is good practice to look into their experience in the particular industry that they're operating in or their experience with the company that they're currently with. But the main portion of your research will go towards the CEO. Having a CEO that's on our side is critical to this framework. Here's a few clips from various investors talking about the management team and about the CEO in particular.
What we're trying to do is we're trying to find a business with a wide and long-lasting moat around it, protecting a terrific economic castle with an honest lord in charge of the castle. And then if we feel good about the moat, then we try to figure out whether the Lord is going to try and take it all for himself, or whether he's likely to do something stupid with the proceeds, etc. But that's the way we look at businesses. Ideally, is you want terrific management at a terrific business, and that's what we look for.
And look for somebody who's really driven to excel and loves this company. One of the guys I most admire as an investor is this tremendous investor named Lee Lu, and he went so far looking at the management team of a company that made boots that he flew to the CEO's hometown and went to the guy's church and then went to his country club to find out from people who lived around this guy if he was trustworthy.
But I think when you see the extreme cases, the ones that are going to cause you nothing but trouble or the ones that are going to bring you nothing but joy, I think you can identify those pretty well. Charlie?
Well, yeah, I think it's pretty simple. You've got integrity, intelligence and experience and dedication. And that's what human enterprises need to run well. And
the CEO and the management team determine if the company succeeds just as much as the company itself. Phil Town makes the reference to jockeys and says you want to bet on the jockey as much as you want to bet on the horse. He says, I love putting my money on a great jockey, a great CEO. There's nothing better for sleeping well at night than knowing some honest, owner-orientated and driven person is out there thinking about how to make me money. Now, there's many ways to know if the management team and the CEO is on our side as shareholders. The first way is if they are long-term shareholders themselves. If the management team and the CEO in particular own shares in the business, or if their ownership in the company is a decent percentage of their net worth, then there's a good chance that they are firmly on the side of long-term shareholders like us. If they have skin in the game, then they will usually strive to create long-term value for shareholders because they are one. It's not critical that every single member of the management team owns shares. But if I'm looking at a business and every single member of the management team, including the CEO, owns a couple of $1 million in shares, it shows that they have skin in the game. They have faith in the company long term. Whereas if I'm looking at a business and not a single member of the management team own any shares, it just shows that they have nothing on the line. If the company fails, they just lose a job and nothing more. There's a few ways you can check if the management team owns shares in the company, which in investing lingo is known as insider ownership. My favorite favourite site for checking insider ownership is simply Wall Street. It's a great site that has a premium version and a free version. I just use the free version because I'm a cheap millennial, but the free version is brilliant and it lets you look at up to 5 companies per month. Let's use Berkshire Hathaway as an example. We can scroll down to management and see some facts about the executives. It says Warren E. Buffett has been chairman, CEO and president of Berkshire for over 50 years. We can hit see more and read all about his professional journey if we wish to know more. I'll scroll past compensation for now because we'll look into that in a second, but for now let's just focus on insider ownership. If we scroll down to the leadership team, we can see all the key members of Berkshire's management team, their respective ownership in the business and their tenure. As you can see, Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger have been there forever, nearly 100 years of experience between them. As for ownership, Buffett owns a staggering 15% of the business, totaling $100 billion in value. I'd estimate that's a fairly big chunk of his net worth. As for Charlie, he owns 0.3% of the business, which is still nearly $2 billion in value. And both vice chairmen also own shares too, which is a good sign. If we scroll down to the board, pretty much all the board members own Berkshire shares, which is awesome. It can happen in business where the management team and the board in particular are there to represent shareholders, but they only end up representing themselves and serving their own interests. And there's no better way to know if the management are shareholder orientated than if they're shareholders themselves. Okay, let's quickly go back to compensation. When it comes to executive compensation, you want your hard-working managers to be rewarded, but you also want to make sure they're not taking advantage of the business and working to fatten their own pocket. A lot of the time in wonderful businesses, companies tend to employ a set of compensation policies that tie in executives' compensation and the performance of the company together, meaning the management's goals are aligned with the shareholders and the success of the company. Some of the best CEOs in the world make less than 20 grand a year in salary, but are awarded ownership via shares if the company meets certain operational milestones. For example, with Tesla, most of Elon Musk's net worth has come from awards received for his outstanding performance in leading Tesla to new heights and breaking production records. These type of policies make the management team act more like business owners, which is what we want. Okay, the next point, which is probably the most important point today, is if the business is founder or co-founder led, meaning that the CEO is the person or one of the people that created the business. Nobody has the vision or determination for the company to succeed than the person who created it. The greatest businesses of our time are all founder led. Steve Jobs with Apple, Bill Gates with Microsoft, Elon Musk with Tesla, and Jeff Bezos with Amazon. A great founder CEO is what Phil Town calls a level 5 leader, someone who is shareholder orientated and driven. Nobody works as hard as the founder and they usually have significant ownership in the business. To them, that company is like their baby, their life's work, and to them they'll do anything to see that company succeed. However, it's important to know that not all founders are created equal. Some founders can be terrible CEOs. For example, in July 2021, according to the New York Times, the founder and chairman of Nikola, an electric truck company in the US, resigned after being accused of deceiving investors and leading them on about the company's technology. This is actually pretty funny. So they shot a promotional video and it showed what seemed to be one of their trucks driving along the road. Then a whistleblower revealed that the truck wasn't even functional and they'd put one of their prototypes at the top of a hill and let it roll down the hill, giving the illusion that the truck was operating under its own propulsion. And then to top it off, Nikola's management came along and said, well, we didn't say it was driving under its own propulsion, you guys kind of just assumed. And as a result of the management's lack of integrity, the share price suffered dramatically. So just because a company is founder-led doesn't mean it's a good thing. And on the flip side, Dr. Lisa Su at AMD is one of my favourite CEOs and one of the most brilliant and successful CEOs in the world. I couldn't imagine a better person to lead AMD, and yet she isn't a founder or co-founder. So it's not something that's an absolute.
Only a Sith deals in absolutes.
No matter whether they're a founder or not, they still have to meet the rest of our requirements. Like the previous point, it's just a preference, and I personally like owning founder-led businesses that have vision and are shareholder orientated. The next point is about the management as a whole, but primarily about the CEO. One of the most important parts of assessing the management team is their performance, and the best way to do that is look at the company's performance. Fortunately, we've done some of the work already. In the last video, we looked at the big 5 numbers and if the business had a moat. If a business didn't meet our second M criteria, then we wouldn't have moved on to the third M. So we already know that this business has a solid big 5 numbers, meaning the management are effectively allocating capital and getting a good ROIC. They're growing shareholder equity, giving us long-term value, and growing the business by increasing revenues or sales. Another way to assess a management's performance is to look at their debt and how they've managed debt in the past. Let's take a look at Nvidia again, just because we used Nvidia in our last video. If we go to Quick FS, find the drop down menu and go to balance sheet. If we scroll down to liabilities, you'll see long-term debt listed for the past 5 to 10 years. There's a couple of ways to assess debt. In a perfect world, we'd like a company with zero debt, but in reality, most companies have a little bit of debt, which is completely fine. First, you can look at the debt amount itself to see if it's growing over time, staying stagnant, or if it's declining. In Nvidia's case, they've been pretty stable for a few years at around $2 billion. Until this year, they've roughly tripled their debt to $6 billion. So maybe as we keep digging, we might be able to find a reason why Nvidia tripled their debt last year. The last way you can compare debt is to compare it to the equity of the business. After all, the equity is what's left over for shareholders after you subtract the liabilities from the assets. Generally, if the equity is higher than the long-term debt, it's a good thing, as they can pay off their entire debt with their equity if need be. And a company with more debt than equity is not a good sign. If a company's equity doubles its debt, it's a really good sign. And in Nvidia's case, if we do some napkin math, we have $6 billion in long-term debt and roughly $17 billion in equity. So the equity is nearly triple the long-term debt, which is a really good sign that the management can manage their debt. The next point about the management team is about honesty. You want your CEO to be honest and operate the business with integrity. An honest CEO will always give you the facts up front and tell you about any potential problems that the company might face, or problems they have faced in the last year. And you also want them to be honest about the future predictions and the growth estimates of the business. The best way to get this information is from the company's annual report, or something that's known in investing lingo as a 10K. If you guys get into investing, a 10K is something that you will hear about a lot, so it's something to get familiar with. A 10K is a compulsory annual report that must be filed by all public companies to the SEC. The 10K lays out every aspect of the company's operations for that year. It includes an overview of the business, a CEO letter to shareholders, the risks that the company faces, the management's estimates for the future, the executive compensation, the 3 financial statements, and a breakdown of each aspect of their performance. It is a bit of a read, but as Warren Buffett, Monish Pabrai and Phil Town, as well as many others all say, if you understand the business and it's well within your circle of competence, then reading the 10K should be a breeze, and you should already understand most of it already. To give you guys an example, I'm going to look at Nvidia's 10K and I'm going to read through some of the key areas to see if we think that Nvidia's management are being honest with us and acting with integrity. If you want to find a 10K for any public company, simply type in your company's name followed by 10K. So for Nvidia, we'll type in Nvidia 10K and we'll click on financial info and SEC filings. This will bring us to Nvidia's investor relations page. Use the drop down menu for form types and we'll select annual filings. That will filter out all the other filings and give us the 10K for 2021, which is what we want. And to bring it up, I'm going to click the little Adobe Reader and it will open the 10K in another tab. So here we are. This is how all 10K should look on the first page. As you can see, it's 93 pages long, so for now we can just focus on the key areas. If we scroll down, we can see the table of contents, which is nice for finding particular sections we want to look at. If we go to the business section, this is where Nvidia lays out what they are, what they do, and what they plan to do. They usually give a detailed description of their past and their achievements along the way. If you're interested in the company and understand it, it's a really interesting read and it gives you so much information directly from the company. If we scroll down a little bit more, we can see that they've included a paragraph about their pending acquisition of ARM. ARM is a company that specializes in a specific type of computing architecture used in phones and other devices. It's also the architecture for the new Apple M1 chip, which is one of the best semiconductor chips in the world right now. We can see that they've come to an agreement with SoftBank to purchase ARM holdings for a total of $40 billion, which is a massive acquisition. They also explain how they'll be paying for it. They plan on paying essentially $20 billion in cash and $20 billion in Nvidia shares. It's good that the management list all this information in a straightforward way so anybody can make sense of it. And if you're familiar with ARM technology and its potential, then you know that this is a massive deal for Nvidia that should add tremendous value to the business despite its enormous price tag. Essentially, it's all done and they're just waiting on the regulators in various countries to approve the deal. If we go back up to the table of contents, the next section we'll look at is the risk factors. Here is where they explain each risk factor that might affect the business's operations in detail and can provide lots of insight into the potential dangers that a company can face. This is also a good test of the management's honesty, because if you understand the business, you might already be aware of some potential risks and you want to get the management's opinion on it. You should be able to apply probabilities to each risk factor and gauge how likely it is to happen. I won't waste too much time on this now, but if you're reading a 10K for your business, I highly recommend combing through the risk factors. So let's go back up to the table of contents. I plan on doing a full video about the 3 financial statements in detail, just because this video will go for over an hour otherwise. Thankfully, we've already compiled the most important numbers from the financial statements with our big 5 numbers and our debt. Okay, so that's it for the 10K, and it's a must read for any business that you're thinking about investing in. If you want a golden example of how a brilliant CEO communicates with their investors and how to act with integrity and talent, I highly recommend reading the annual letters of 2 of the best investors alive, Warren Buffett and Nick Sleep. Both of these guys managed their own respective funds that compounded money at over 20% a year. And they each wrote amazing annual letters to investors. In these letters, they share the good decisions they made, their mistakes, and they just generally share their investing knowledge. They give you all the facts straight up, and honestly, it's a must read for all investors to see how a brilliant management team communicate with their investors. They are full of knowledge and wisdom, and I still enjoy reading them today. If you want to find these letters, go to Google and just type in Warren Buffett letters or Nick Sleep letters, and that should bring up their entire list of annual letters. Warren Buffett's letters are from Berkshire Hathaway, and Nick Sleep's letters are from the Nomad Investing Partnership. I'll also put some links down in the description box below. The last point I want to talk about regarding the management team is something taken from Aswat Damodaran. Mr. Damodaran is a lecturer who teaches valuation and corporate finance at Stern School of Business in New York University. He is a very wise man and a brilliant teacher. He also generously shares so much of his wisdom and his lectures on his YouTube channel for free. So thank you so much, Mr. Damodaran, for your generosity. So what I wanted to show you was how Mr. Damodaran talked about having different types of CEOs for companies in different life cycles or stages of life. Have a listen.
The first thing I want to talk about is what I call a corporate life cycle, that every company, just like human beings, is born, it grows, it matures, and like every human being, it declines. And just as human beings don't like to age, companies don't like to get old. So the first message I want to talk about is this notion of a corporate life cycle and how trying to fight it is the most dangerous thing a business can do. The second message I want to deliver is the focus of a company needs to change as it moves through the life cycle. You know the right CEO for a company is? If you're a young startup, who do you want as your CEO? It's all about story. You want Steve the visionary. I gave the name Steve for obvious reasons. You want the storyteller. As you become a young growth company, you want Bob the builder, right? Because you got to start building a business. As you become a mature company, you need Don the defender. Then you become a declining company. You know who you need as your CEO? You need Larry the liquidator. If you've never seen the movie Other People's Money, I'd strongly recommend it. Danny DeVito plays the role of Larry the liquidator. The right CEO for a company is different at different stages, and here's where the compressed life cycle kicks in. If you look at a company like GE, it took you 125 years to get from young to really old. Your CEOs passed on, mortality kicked in. But if you're a CEO of a young tech company, you could very well find yourself running a mature or a declining tech company, and the same CEO might no longer be the right CEO for you. I'll make a prediction. You're going to see a lot more disruption in management ranks because life cycles have become compressed. You're already seeing this play out with Tesla, right? Was Elon Musk the right CEO to build up? Absolutely. The guy has visions coming out of his nose, his eyes, his every conceivable orifice. But is he the right CEO to build an automobile company? I'm not so sure. And this is something we're going to face in a lot of companies. Great founders suddenly being inappropriate CEOs for the kinds of companies these companies are building.
So let me ask you just to give us a straight, you've been hinting around at it, but somebody, in fact, it was Dominique sent in a question.
Yeah.
And it's about Elon Musk, and is he right? See, now you're hinting around. I just want a yes or no for these people who deserve the truth.
I'm going to give you a long-winded answer because I'm incapable of short answers.
That's not what I wanted.
Remember, when we talk about Steve Jobs, we remember Steve Jobs, the great CEO? I've been an Apple investor since 1981. I remember Steve Jobs who almost destroyed Apple as a company. He built the Lisa. I bought the Lisa. Horrible computer. So the first iteration of Steve Jobs, he was not the right CEO for Apple, right? Second iteration, somehow it became this magical success story. You know what was different? He had a chief operating officer named Tim Cook, who doesn't have a visionary bone in his body. but he can make the trains run on time. That was the difference. So my answer for Elon Musk is, Tesla needs Elon Musk, but he needs a chief operating officer who he's willing to trust and give power to and not tweet about every 15 seconds on. And if he does that, I think he can pull it off. So it's doable. I don't know whether he's willing to put his ego to the side, but that's, I think, the answer to.
So as you can see, a different type of CEO is required for businesses in different life cycles. Or the CEO must have a management team behind him that complements the founder, just like with Tim Cook helping Steve Jobs at Apple. This is a really important point that many people do not consider when analysing the management team. Always think about what life cycle your company is in when you're analysing the management team. If you want to check out the full presentation from Aswath, I'll put a link in the description box below. I highly recommend watching it because he's truly a genius. He has a brilliant way of explaining things and making complicated concepts really easy to understand. Let me know in the comments if you watched the full presentation and let me know what you thought. Okay guys, that's it for this video and we're nearly at the end of the series. We only have one more aim to go, which is margin of safety. In the next video, we're going to deep dive into the concept of margin of safety and how to value a business. We'll be doing lots of examples and I'm going to be sharing 2 different valuation methods that you can use to help you value stocks. If you want to get notified when that video comes out, hit that subscribe button and tap the little bell. If you've watched the video all the way to the end, thank you so much for watching. If you guys enjoyed the video, please consider hitting that like button as it really helps support me and it helps support the channel. I release videos every fortnight where I cover all aspects of stock market investing. If you have any questions about anything I said, please let me know in the comments down below. I reply to every single question. And as always, this video is not financial advice. Please always do your own research before making any investment decisions. That's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching and I'll see you guys back in part 4 of the series.